Good morning, everyone. If you were here yesterday, you know my name is Matthew Ford, Senior Assistant Attorney General. I'm incredibly excited to be here today for our next panel. I'm going to introduce everyone, but before I do that, as you've seen throughout this summit, we've talked about a lot of different topics as it relates to cybersecurity. We've talked about infrastructure, data breaches, how to protect yourself at home, because the theory behind all of this is cybersecurity affects all aspects of our lives, whether it's an organization you work with, whether it's things that you depend on, such as energy, water, other infrastructure. And so today, essentially what we're going to talk about in this panel has to do with election integrity. Obviously, we have an election coming up here soon, and I know this is a topic that everyone certainly cares about. And so hopefully we're going to get some good information from our wonderful panelists here about what it means to secure our elections. So first, let me introduce everybody. First, in no particular order, we have JayP Massiet. Massiet is a special agent at the Arkansas Attorney General's Office in our Public Integrity Unit, Election Integrity Unit. He's a certified law enforcement instructor with over 3,000 hours of certified training, and he's a graduate of the FBI Arkansas Leader and FBI Executive Leadership Institute, earning the LEADA Trilogy Award. We also have Mr. Keith Ingram. Keith serves as the Election Security Advisor for the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, which is at least his region, headquartered in Irving, Texas. He is responsible for helping to ensure the security of elections infrastructure and risk management related to elections with private and public sector partners across Arkansas, Louisiana, New Mexico, Oklahoma, and Texas. We also we have Mr. Gary Vance here again. Gary is wonderful. He's an experienced cyber defense professional. Also the Arkansas's chief security officer for IT. He's a business-focused risk leader and cyber defense professional. He's successfully worked from the executive levels all the way through operations to ensure cyber risk management and to protect businesses and build trust in brands. And finally, we have Spencer Ammons. He's an election security specialist for the Office of the Arkansas Secretary of State. He currently works with the county clerk's offices across Arkansas and other state and federal partners to ensure elections run smoothly and democratically without interference, threats, or manipulation. And so, JayP, let me start with you. What is the Election Integrity Unit? What is it that y'all do?
Well, I'm here to not only introduce myself, but also the Election Integrity Unit. Just like the Public Integrity Unit, not many people realize or know or are aware that we even exist. The Public Integrity Unit has been around since 2018, and then last year, Attorney General Griffin created the Election Integrity Unit, and we really didn't start get going until this year, obviously with the 2024 elections. And what we have is that this was created to give Arkansans an outlet to submit complaints and ensure them that all credible leads will be investigated. Now, we work hand in hand with Director Chris Madison with the Arkansas State Election Commissioners, and they've been gracious enough to always be there for us with training, direction, and guidance on our investigations. And so working with them and other county commissioners, we look into all matters that people complain about. And lately it seems that with so many initiatives out there on the city, county, and state level, a lot of petitions are out there. There's a lot of canvassers are out there trying to gain signatures for their initiatives. And it seems like the main complaint that we're getting with these petitions is they're calling in saying it's almost like it's buyer's remorse. Is I signed this petition, I didn't realize what I was signing, or my mother didn't realize what she was signing, and I need to have my name removed. And that's a pretty big ask to go through all those petitions and try to find your name to have that removed. But one thing that the public needs to know, that once that petition becomes certified, your name's not coming off that. It's not coming off. And so what we try to instruct people and train them is be aware of what you're signing. That canvasser has to have a copy of that initiative with them to present to you at request, not to give to you, but to present to you so you can read that over. And we ask that everybody, if you get approached by someone asking for your signature on a petition, know what you're signing. And be aware of that. If you feel uncomfortable with the surroundings, the canvasser, or just the language of that initiative, don't sign it. You don't have to sign that. There are plenty of other canvassers out there that will explain what you're signing there. And then we have other issues that we go into with absentee ballots. And I have to say that this state, the state of Arkansas, has been very, very fortunate that election fraud is very, very rare. Occasionally, we may have, on a local level, a bad actor that wants to take advantage of the system. Currently, we're looking into a matter of absentee ballots where that process is being abused, but we're currently looking into that. And if you are going to want to file a complaint, there's a process that you go through. And we have created a portal that you can file a complaint. And if you can remember ARTrust at arkansasag.gov, that's ARTrust at arkansasag.gov, that will lead you to not only the Public Integrity Division, but also the Election Integrity Division, and you can voice your complaint, and then we will contact you as soon as possible. And once we get those complaints, then we will call Chris Madison, Director Chris Madison, and his folks will review the complaint. If they find any evidence of criminal nature, they will forward that complaint back to our office, and then we will initiate an investigation and go from there. So again, just remember ARTrust at arkansasag.gov. Again, a lot of people don't realize we exist, but we are here to help you and to assist you in any manner we can.
Thank you. Okay, so let me move on to Keith. I've got to ask you, as someone who works for CISA, what is an election security advisor?
Am I on? Okay, there we go. That's a fair question. As you heard yesterday from Director Easterly, CISA has divided the United States up into 10 regions, and each of those regions has people in the field. They have protective security advisors, cybersecurity advisors, and chemical security inspectors, and they all have responsibility to protect all 16 sectors of critical infrastructure. Usually, those PSAs and CSAs and CSIs have a limited geographic region within a state, or in the case of Arkansas, the whole state. So your protective security advisor here in Arkansas is Glenn Moore. Your cybersecurity state coordinator is Chad Johnson, who was on the panel before this one, and your cybersecurity advisor is Gail Combs, and they are in Arkansas all the time. So an election security advisor is a relatively new addition to the CISA boots on the ground workforce. It was announced in July of 2023 at the National Association of Secretary of State meeting. And what Director Easterly's vision was to have people with experience in elections work with election officials, local election officials in the counties, to make sure that those local election officials are having their security needs met by the resources that CISA has. So it's trying to bridge that gap, especially to the smaller and more rural counties. Here in Region 6, we've got 503 counties and parishes, and I would estimate that probably 80 to 85% of them are rural and under-resourced. And so our mission as election security advisors is to reach out to those folks and make sure that their needs are being met and that they have access to the resources that they need to have to make themselves secure. Together, the 10 of us across the country have over 200 years of election experience. Myself, I've got 11 years in the state of Texas as the election director, and so you can see that I bring down the average. But our point is to make sure that we, as people who know elections and what the pieces of election infrastructure are, to make sure that those needs are being met.
Thank you. And Gary, given your vast experience, obviously you're responsible for protecting Arkansas government's computer systems and networks. Can you discuss a little bit for all of us, for all of our benefit, some of the best practices for securing election systems? Because obviously these election systems are connected to the internet, right, or to some degree?
Absolutely. And we've talked a lot about, and you guys have heard a lot about, proper cybersecurity controls and cyber hygiene, and so all of what you've heard there are going to apply to these host systems, probably with a higher level of security control, right? Software and patch management, system performance. Obviously, we don't want a degradation of the performance of the systems that are supporting, the election process. The proper level of network segmentation with these host systems. Really important with these rule systems that we talked about, that we have a set of common controls in place that can be measured and tested against to ensure integrity of those systems as well. Credential management, practicing least privilege for access to these systems is very important. But in general, it's no different than securing a data center environment. You've got to defend those systems just as you would, any other data system. You got to protect them just like you would in an enterprise data environment.
Thank you. It's Spencer. As someone who works for the Secretary of State, obviously the Secretary of State has an important role in elections. Can you talk a little bit about what your office is doing to help local election officials prepare for the upcoming election?
Yes, under Secretary Thurston, we've really prioritized being a resource to counties. This past spring, we did a regional election security outreach meeting series where we went around the state hosting these meetings with a focus on election security. These were supported by CISA, FBI, Arkansas State Fusion Center, and covered topics like AI, cyber hygiene best practices, and then also just like what election officials should do if they're receiving threats. After that project, in coordination with CISA, we began offering county-specific tabletop exercises to counties. And if they chose to participate in those, we'd go out, present the scenarios to the county clerks, the election commissioners, local law enforcement, IT personnel, and just getting all these folks in the same room to discuss election security was very beneficial. On top of that, working with CISA and Arkansas Division of Emergency Management to help funnel grant funds down to counties for election security through the Homeland Security Grant Program to help these counties beef up their security for their storage facilities or just their workplaces in general. And just really on a day-to-day basis, try to be available to counties. They all have my cell phone number. I email them regularly about potential threats, just things to be on the lookout for, and updates on things like cyber hygiene best practices or mail handling procedures, things like that.
If I could ask just a little quick follow-up. You mentioned a term. I know that's kind of a cybersecurity term, but a tabletop exercise. Can you just tell us what that is, just as a general?
Sure. So, like I said, this was with CISA, and it was a really good project for us. We would cater the whole exercise for the county that was having us out, and it's really just presenting scenarios for them to all discuss and talk through together how they would handle that situation. It's a very informal environment where people hopefully speak freely and share ideas, but they accomplished a lot. They were a good thing for us to do.
That's great, great. Keith, let me ask you. So, yesterday and today, a lot of what we're talking about is risk, right? And that's what cybersecurity and all of this stuff. What we're really talking about is how do we minimize the risk to our systems, et cetera. Can you talk a little bit about some examples of election infrastructure risk mitigation this year? What are some of the things that y'all are doing?
Absolutely. So, an election year is a busy time for election officials, and so it's also a time when you need to be on your A game. And so, especially in a presidential election year, that is not the year to make big changes in your infrastructure in any way. What you need to do is have everything fine-tuned. So what we've been emphasizing this year are small changes that are free or no cost that can make a large difference in risk mitigation. So we've encouraged counties to institute endpoint detection and response. That's provided free from the election infrastructure sharing and analysis center, so they can get the state-of-the-art endpoint detection and response on their endpoints at no cost to them. It's easy to install. There's not an update required. The program updates itself, and so it's one of those things that is easy to do that has a big bang for its buck. We've done the same thing with malicious domain blocking and reporting, as well as pursuing a .gov. You heard yesterday about spoofing of websites. In 2020 in Texas, we did some dark web monitoring, and we discovered that well over 150 Texas counties had a spoof of their website available to the public. And some of those counties had 30 to 50 spoofed websites. Well, if you get a .gov as a county, then you cannot be spoofed because only government entities can get .gov. .gov is administered by CISA, it's free, and if a county wants to transition to .gov, if they let me know that they made the request, then I can help them accelerate the process on the back end so that they can get it in place before this election. I had one last week who let me know that they had requested it on Friday, and by Tuesday they had the .gov domain and were switching over to it. So those are the kind of small changes that can make a really big difference in election security, and that's what we've been emphasizing with the counties this year. This tabletop exercise that Spencer mentioned in the counties is just invaluable, because what it does is it helps the law enforcement, emergency management, and the election official think through together what a response would be if they had a polling place that was somehow the subject of a protest, or some vigilantes were trying to make sure that voters had citizenship before they voted. I mean, those kind of scenarios are unfortunately the reality that we live in right now, and so they need to be prepared for it. And so having all of those players at the same table discussing the response to those scenarios helps them be ready. We hope, of course, that nothing like that happens. And then secondly, we hope that if it happens somewhere besides Arkansas, or in my case, Region 6. But if it does, we need to be ready. And those are the kind of steps that counties have been taking throughout this year.
If I could ask a follow-up on this point, you mentioned spoofing. Why would someone want to spoof? I mean, what's the end goal for that?
The goal is, of course, to get eyeballs on the wrong web page so that they can do whatever malicious thing they want to do. If they're a criminal, then they want to somehow get money out of it. If they're disinformation actor. They want to make sure that the voters have the wrong information about the election. So it depends upon what the motive is behind the person who set up the spoofed website. But the thing to do is to make sure that you've got a .gov and that whatever you were using before, either .net or .com or .org, that you keep that name, because you don't want somebody to go to your old page and get the wrong information.
And one just real quick point, again, some terminology. When you mention endpoint, what do you mean by that?
I mean the computer that somebody does their daily work on. That's the individual employee in the office works on this computer. That's an endpoint.
Moving back to you, Gary, you know, obviously, we just talked about endpoints, and these election systems are systems. So the reality is, as we've talked about over the last 2 days, cyber threats are not just possibilities. Like, these are the realities of everything that we do on a day-to-day basis. So can you discuss the importance of proper cyber hygiene, just in general?
Sure. So the way I would define cyber hygiene is you cannot achieve cyber excellence without good cyber hygiene. And you won't achieve good cyber hygiene without proper cyber controls. So these two processes work hand in hand. They feed off one another. When you have your cyber controls in place, you use a method called continuous monitoring, which is part of the hygiene process, to ensure those controls are functioning as they are intended to function and as you intend them to function. And so these controls have to be tested. You cannot implement a cyber control and assume it's good forever and it has, you know, a lifetime warranty, if you will. They have to be tested frequently, and that testing process is done through cyber hygiene. Cyber hygiene will ensure integrity of those systems and will also ensure the integrity of the controls that you have in place to secure those systems.
If I could ask a follow-up, I mean, how do you go about testing a system? And can you talk a little bit just generally on what you can do to do that? I mean, is there anything in particular that you can do?
Was that for me?
Yes.
Yes,
Sorry.
oh, sorry. So, yes, the one way that you can test those systems is through an audit process. So as you develop and implement your cyber controls, they should be audited, and they should be audited to whatever regulatory requirements are intended for those systems to meet. So the audit process allows those controls to be tested. Any findings that are discovered during the audit process, those findings can then be documented, and then you can follow up with those findings for corrective actions. So the audit process works hand in hand with your cyber hygiene, in that, you know, a third party or external auditor will audit you against your controls to ensure they're performing properly.
Thank you. Spencer, so has the Secretary of State taken any steps to straighten its security posture? Or are there anything in particular that the office is doing to help secure the elections and secure its own systems?
Yes, we recently implemented a new multi-factor authentication process for our voter registration database. And that was a really good project for our office to accomplish, because not only does it require SOS staff to utilize this process, but it's for all the local election officials of Arkansas as well, to have access to the voter registration database. And we've tried to be more assertive with our vendors as well. We have open lines of communication with them, but we also, with one vendor in particular, have a weekly phone call that covers lots of topics, but we can also cover election security needs as well, to make sure they're prioritizing it the way we want them to. And then the thing I'm most proud of probably is the formation of the Arkansas Election Security Working Group That's Secretary of State's office, CISA, FBI, Association of Arkansas Counties, State Board of Election Commissioners, USPS, AG's office. There's several more members that I'm missing, but it's been a really good group. We meet regularly to discuss potential threats, trends in election security, outreach that we want to accomplish. And then as Election Day approaches, starting with early voting, we're going to have a message dashboard where we can all communicate on and just kind of have really good situational awareness on anything going on. And that's been a good project for us as well.
You mentioned vendors, and I've seen that a lot in cybersecurity. You know, we tend to focus a lot of times on our own systems, but we don't really, a lot of people don't fully comprehend the fact that a lot of our vulnerabilities happen with our vendors, right? The things that we use that we don't necessarily create ourselves. Can you just say a little bit why it's important to look into your vendors and their posture as well?
Definitely. You just really want to make sure that they're prioritizing what you want them to. And that's something we preach to counties as well. Like if you want to go the route of .gov to be more secure, get with your vendor and talk to them about it. Don't just write it off. So yeah, it's definitely very important.
Awesome. And you mentioned collaboration. It sounds like everyone here is on the same page as it relates to, especially at least for elections, communicating with one another and trying to come up with this solution to what is a problem for everyone. So have you seen a lot of benefit for this collaboration in terms of these meetings and et cetera?
Definitely. Really starting at the local level, the formation of the Arkansas Election Security Working Group kind of connects the dots between local election officials, SOS office, and then other state and federal partners. To have these open lines of communication already rolling before Election Day is imperative, because if something was to happen, you already know who to call. You already know that person. And even not just election security, but if a tornado came through and wiped out power in a portion of the state, we have contacts at Arkansas Division of Emergency Management we could lean on to help us mitigate that situation. So it's very important.
Keith, do you have anything to add to that? I'm kind of curious to your, I guess, your viewpoint on that. Obviously, CISA, throughout these 2 days, has offered its services to everyone, but how important is it for us to collaborate on this issue?
The collaboration is essential. It's everybody's project, election security or any other kind of critical infrastructure security. The Arkansas Election Security Working Group is a model. It's a best practice. It's what I'm encouraging all of the states in Region 6 to do, because it works, it functions, and it does exactly what Spencer says. It makes sure that the players know each other and who to call before the incident happens, because you don't want to be looking on the internet or information for a phone number when you're in the middle of a mess. And so that collaboration on the front end is so important, so vital, and Arkansas is very lucky to have it.
Well, I want to thank everyone for being on this panel. I know everyone's interested in elections, and I know this is an incredibly important issue, and I hope some possibly questions that people in the audience might have been answered related to the security of our elections. If everybody could give a round of applause for our panelists.